quick shout out to our sponsor before we dive in. Is your rig looking a little dull? Railsback Polishing and Chrome Shop is your go-to to keep everything looking brand new. Their no appointment needed drive-through polishing bay opens in July, and you'll be in and out in under 3 hours with full metal restoration done the right way. The Chrome retail shop is coming soon too, with a lounge, food, drinks, and all the extras. Call Keaton at 712-269-8352 or stop by their express polishing bay located at 1290 Dean Ave in Shaler, Iowa, and check them out. Welcome to the Rural Dispatch, the podcast delivering stories from rural America. I'm your host, Allie Behrens. Headquartered in rural Iowa, I help run a nationwide livestock transportation company, and I'm here to bring you stories from the people who help shape this industry and our rural communities. Whether you're a trucker, livestock producer, or rural entrepreneur, this show is for you. Each week, we explore the realities of rural business life, from the highways to the fields and everything in between. So buckle up and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back. So far, there hasn't been a single episode of this podcast where someone hasn't mentioned their dad. Whether it's something he always said or something he taught them or the way he brought them into the business, it always circles back to dear old dad. And today, I've pulled all of these stories together. In this episode, you'll hear stories and sayings from past guests, a tribute to the men who helped raise a generation of hard workers, good husbands, and dads themselves. And at the very end, you'll hear from two of my favorite little people, Ridge and Royce, who sat down with me to talk about their dad. I hope this episode makes you think of your own dad and maybe even pick up the phone and give him a call. Let's get into it. All right, let's kick things off with where it all starts for most of us, watching our dads do what they do. First up is Jeff Schrader.
Growing up, my grandpa fed cattle, Sac County. Grandpa, dad, brothers, uncles.
Your dad did feed cattle?
Yes,
okay.
He did. Yep.
Where you live at?
So they had an outside yard there, but it started where Choke lives, my brother. That was a big feed yard, had a feed mill. That was the source of everything right there. I was always around it. I was 16, and Choke and Rodeo would always hang out in the office in the shop. Or not the shop, the feed mill. And about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was time to drink beer. So Rodeo said, hey, I want you to come learn how to feed. So I'll go with him, learn how to feed. And since that day, I've been feeding cattle because they could sit and drink beer. Hey, bud, go feed that load. Feed this pin, this many pounds. We'll be sitting here. I wasn't drinking beer at 16, so started then, and
here we are.
Here we are today.
From feeding cattle to figuring it out on the road, here's Jeremy talking about how his dad didn't really ask if he wanted a truck. He just told him he was going.
So yeah, let's start from there. So I was going to college and it was coming up on my 21st birthday. I would say later on in 2001. I didn't really know what direction I was going in life. I was living locally, going to DMAC in Carroll, working for my dad on the farm and working part-time at McDonald's still. And I think my dad seen I really didn't have any direction. And so he bought a truck and said, well, when you turn 21, we're going to send you truck. And I never wanted any part of trucking just for the fact of I seen all the time I had missed with my dad growing up over the years, and I didn't really know if I wanted that for my family, but I also seen everything it provided, the work ethic, the financial side of it, if you keep at it. So I was willing to get into it, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have done it.
You might notice a theme here. When your dad does something long enough, you pick it up early. Will Epperly knew by the time he was 7 what he wanted to be, and it's pretty cool how he followed through.
Back in the 90s, the Livestock Marketing Association was going through a little bit of a restructuring at that time. So they had to rebuild LMA pretty much from the ground up. And my father, Albert Epperly, Jim Jr., and Pat Goggins, some of the greats in the livestock industry, kind of took LMA, rebuilt it back up into the fabulous association that it is today. So my father and Jim, I've known them for years. I went with my dad to all these auctioneering contests. The year that John won it, I was just a little sprat at that time. In 2003, when he won it in Lexington, Kentucky, I was there. My dad was actually one of the judges. I think he was an interview judge that year. And he's been judges in the past, and I was always fascinated with the contest. Well, in 2010, I was lucky enough to qualify for my first semifinals, make it to the big dance at 19, 20 years old. And it was a very humbling experience because I was getting to sail right alongside with my heroes and greats of the time. And it was really cool. But in 2010, John watched me down there in Oklahoma City, and he came back, told Jim and Jay, he says, hey, y'all know this Epperly kid? And Jim kind of popped off to him. He goes, oh, yeah, that's Albert Epperly's boy. And he goes, we might want to start watching him. Well, in 2013, I was living in Kentucky at the time, working for the Bluegrass Stockyards. But John called me in May and said, hey, would you come out here and interview for a job at Dunlap? I said, well, yeah. I mean, when one of the most respected barns in the country calls you with that opportunity, of course you jump at it. So I came out here in June of 2013. I'd already qualified for the Worlds, and it was right before the World Championships. Went down to Montgomery, Alabama. John I pick at John these days about it because John avoided me like the plague down there in Alabama. Wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't say boo to a ghost. He said hi to me and kind of walked past. And I still razz him about it today, didn't know who I was. And then on my birthday in July, John calls me at 5 o'clock at night. I get back from work. I'm really tired, and I see John Shaven pop up on my phone. I said, well, this could be interesting. I could get it, or, I'm just going to stay here and be miserable in Kentucky. But called me and he says, hey, we'd really like you to come to Dunlap. We think you'd be a great fit out here. So I jumped at the opportunity. August 10th, I moved out here in 2013 and been here ever since. So they kind of watched me from 2010 to 2013, but I really think that I got hired on the admiration of my father that Jim and John had about my dad, because I will say my dad has been one of my greatest heroes in my time, from him owning a livestock auction back when I was a little kid to now to where I am. I never think my father thought I'd get to this goal. He always knew I had the drive, but he never figured I'd get this goal at this young of age. I mean, people look at me now, I'm 36 years old, but I'm kind of still young in most people's eyes.
Right, yeah. So you grew up in the barn, basically.
Mm-hmm.
When did you know that this was what you wanted to do with your life?
I guess really when I knew that I wanted to be it. My dad was an auctioneer, and my grandfather's gone. His name was Frank Epperly. My dad and him built the barn from the ground up in Virginia. I remember being 7 years old, and I was always fascinated with it. I always listened to Ralph Wade, the 1974 world champion, all the time. My brother still today cannot listen to Superior and listen to Ralph and not be thinking about going to sleep, because I would listen to Ralph when I went to bed every night, and I would play it pretty loud in my room. But when I was 7, I looked at my grandfather and I said, I want to sell baby calves. And my granddaddy grabbed me, put me on my knees, and it was pretty much thrown to the fire, was sell them. No practice, no nothing. I sat up there and I sold baby calves, and it kind of became a routine. And I told my dad at 10, 11 years old, I really think this is the profession I want to be in, is I want to run a livestock auction. Well, at 14, my heart got broken. My grandfather and my father decided they were done with the auction business and decided to sell the barn. So then I became kind of a cowboy. My dad decided we were going to run purebred Angus cows, and we got up to about 700 mama cows back in Virginia. So me and my brother, all the way through middle school, high school, even a little bit of college, we went back and worked for Dad. We was horseback in the mountains, running cows, weaning calves, calving, baling hay. I mean, it was all the things that cowboying was doing back there.
The love of work starts young, and for Mark, it started in the passenger seat next to his dad, hauling loads and soaking it all in.
My dad was really strict on work ethic and getting up. He was up all night too. He drove a truck. My dad did too. So that's probably where I first got it in my blood, because I remember there's nothing that made me happier on sick days when I got to stay home from school. And he was going with Dad in the truck, and he had these softest, goddamn, I remember this old shitty yellow blanket he had in there. I wish I had it today. I would curl up in there. And then I can remember actually my dad on weekends go, like, I think it was Bloomington. Bloomington have a sale barn. But I remember going to Bloomington a bunch with him and getting cattle and bringing them back. I can remember him hauling all that stuff. But he was a very strict with work. And if you buy something, you take care of something.
Marty has a few stories of his own, including one about being 15 years old and just starting to drive, because back then, you just did what your dad said.
What was your dad's name?
Merle Henry.
Merle Henry Wilkin.
Yeah. Yeah, big W. Yeah. He had it on his belt and everything else. Yeah.
Now, did your dad truck his whole life? When you were born, was he trucking?
Yeah. We had the second permit issued to haul for hire in the state of Iowa. Hunt Transportation had the first one, and then my great-grandpa had the second permit issued in the state of Iowa to haul for hire.
I guess I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah, back then, yeah. It was H. Wilkin and Son, and I went to M. Wilkin and Son in, I think, 1928.
So was M. Wilkin and Son, was that your...
That was my grandpa, yeah. My grandpa, yeah.
Okay.
1928 to 1978, so they had 50 years in business when I was in high school. And yeah, everybody trucked.
So did you grow up riding with your dad?
Dad and grandpa, yeah. That's
Were they hauling...
livestock.
They were hauling
grain.
livestock and grain. When do you think you started driving by yourself? Okay, so like me personally, I was running after sale barn stuff, Creston, Clarinda, Denison, Dunlap when I was 16.
I took a 3-deck load of sheep to Albert Lee, Minnesota when I was 15 with a 1965 Diamond T with a 238.
With a 238.
And the wind was blowing that day, and Joel Fink, we had 3 loads, and Joel Fink and my dad was behind me. We had 3 loads going up there, 3 loads of sheep, and wind was blowing out of the north, and that 238 was headed north. Yeah, that don't work very well. So Joel Fink had a 238, and I had a 238, so we ran side by side, breaking the wind for each other, so we get up to 55. And I mean, we had them things to the floor.
15.
Yeah.
Headed to Albert Lee with 3-deck load of sheep.
He think nothing of it. Oh, you got your permit. Yeah, that's for a car.
I mean, what would it have been like if you got caught doing that back then? What would have happened?
Do you think anything
Dad
would have...
said go, so you didn't question your dad back in the day. You just went. Yeah.
Did you ever have a run-in with anybody?
Not back in the day, really. Been pretty lucky, yeah. I'll tell you what. So this one day, we're going out to western Nebraska, and it's in the wintertime, and it's just a freaking sheet of ice on Highway 20 in Nebraska. And Joel Fink, he was driving Dad's Pete, the old cab over, and I was behind him with this Diamond, the 70 Diamond, and it was just a sheet of ice. And the old man gets up and asks Joel, he goes, is that kid driving that truck back there? I was like 15 on a solid sheet of ice. He goes, yeah, he's keeping right up. You know, I mean, the normal guy would go, I think we maybe we're going to get some experience in there. No, they just let me drive it. Crazy, ain't it? Would you put a 15-year-old with a frickin' on a sheet of ice? It's like, just follow me, he said. Okay.
All right. Hang on.
Frozen turd behind the wheel at 15, let me tell you. Yeah, that's how I grew up.
Now, not everyone had a dad in the business, but if you were lucky, you had someone who stepped in and guided you anyway. And that's how it went for Paul.
How do you think you got started trucking? Did your dad truck, or how did you get in a truck?
No, so I grew up in town. My dad was an accountant. My mom worked for a dairy supply company. I mean, dad was an accountant. Mom was a bookkeeper. My grandparents farmed. So I lived out there all summer and every weekend and dairy farmed. I thought I was going to go to college for dairy science. I did that 6 months, not even, at Northeast Iowa Community College, NICC, and wasn't for me. Went on weed harvest, and I guess I caught the gypsy bug there, more or less. I came back. I worked at Lynch's in the yards for a year-ish until I turned 21, and then bought my first truck. So, and that's how I got started. And then we did the deal. There was 2 of us that were supposedly going to buy Agar out, and we had a lot of meetings in Mackey's basement, which is a bar in Ontario, Oregon. And Henry Hirschberger, he's from Mabel, Minnesota area. And he pulled out there, and we bought it on bar tape. Him and I signed it. We had a witness. I call her Aunt Joey. I don't even know what her real name is. Yeah, she was there, so she signed as a witness. And that was the purchase agreement that Agar stuck to when I bought it out like 3 years later. He's like, you still got that bar tape? I said, oh, yeah, we got that yet.
3 years later.
Yep.
What happened to Hirschberger?
He went back to Minnesota, and I gave him the opportunity, and he just wasn't interested.
He probably heard you only had $300.
Probably heard I had $300. He was supposed to be the money behind the deal. There's a long story behind the $300, but we won't get into where that all came from.
But really, so you bought equipment, but I'm assuming that you probably paid more or agars than just the equipment was worth.
Yeah, I'd buy Blue Sky. I bought the book of business, which I'd been in the office already for 3 years. I mean, the book of business was more or less what I'd built, but as being loyal to Matt, I still bought the book of business, and he sounded like a dad. I mean, still respect him, and that's his name. I mean, I paid for my new last name.
Well, I feel like every time we're out, he's in the office.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He stops by all the time.
Yeah, every time we're there, we see Matt.
Yep.
And here's Howard Curry, and he's got a long view of what this whole business looks like across generations.
My main hat is Howard Curry Transport Incorporated. We're a brokerage company, have a handful of trailers. We haul stuff mainly to east to west, a little bit south, but not much. We transport feeder cattle west, fat cattle and hogs east. Don't rarely get west of eastern Nebraska or western Kansas. And brokerage business has grown pretty good from where we started. Dad started the company in 1953. That's his first truck on the phone.
Tell us about your dad. When did your dad start? Was he a trucker?
Dad was a farmer at heart, but he started trucking in the early 50s, trucked through to the late 50s. He always wanted to be a cattle buyer. He was a farmer here in Indiana. He had just bought his first couple farms. He heard of a job in North Platte, Nebraska, company called John Clay and Company. It was a commission company pretty well through the West back in the late 50s and the 60s. And they were looking for a countryman.
Out this way?
Nope. In North Platte, Nebraska. I was born in North Platte, Nebraska.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Dad decided he's going to rent the farms out, loading the kids up, my older brother and sister, and they're moving to Nebraska, and Dad's going to be a cattle buyer.
They packed the car up and headed for North Platte.
And it went stupid well. I mean, a lot of what he did. I mean, he worked this John Clay and Company. I've actually got diaries of his. He kept every day.
Oh, really?
Through this thing. It is neat as holy heck to read him. I mean, he was pretty detailed about what he did every day and where he was in Kansas, Oregon. He was all over the West. But one of the main things he did was he handled the Monfort account for John Clay and Company. What cattle went in the Monforts through them, and he got to be very good friends with the Monforts. And he did that through the early 60s. I was born out there in 62. About the time I was born, he went out on his own, Nelson Curry Commission Company, and he was really successful out there. He didn't leave because business was bad. We had the 2 farms back here, and when I was 3 years old, my grandfather came out and he said, "You either go back to Indiana and sell those farms because they're going to pieces. Not good back there," he said, "or go back and farm them." And my mother hated it out there. Mother did not like it. She
In Nebraska?
Nope. She didn't know nobody. My mother was blind, or mostly blind. And, she was home all week by herself with the kids, and it wasn't a good situation. So they decided to pack up and move. Dad said, "I'll start a feedlot in Indiana." So he moved back here to Liberty, Indiana, and started about a 700 head feedlot and went from mid-60s clear through the early 90s. And he retired, and it all sold. But all through this, he was in the trucking business before he left. There was a gentleman had it during the time he was gone out west. And Dad, we was always involved in trucking through everything. My son is a lot like my dad. He's a cattle guy. He's extremely proud of it. Very, 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 very good. He's loaded with animal husbandry, and he's a workaholic. He's very proud of him. Been very blessed there. My daughter's she's an angel. She's my sparkle. Very blessed there. More important than the trucking or the car.
So once you're in it, you learn really quick. Some dads sit you down and teach you, and others, they just throw you into the fire and let you figure it out. That jump in and learn style shaped how Jeremy works today.
Our dad was old school when he taught you too. I won't forget how I really learned how to figure out my way and navigate is pretty sure we loaded out of Presho, South Dakota, and we got to the interstate and he hopped in with Denny Kluver. We pulled off to the side on the on-ramp and he said, "Well, I'm going to hop in with Kluver. You know where your Grandpa Pudens lives. I'll meet you on the other end." I'm like, "I'm going to do what?" And it still gives me goosebumps to this day because I'm like, well, it's sink or swim, and I know this is how you learn, but, that was before cell phones.
Yeah, you were truly on your own.
You were truly, here's your map. we'll meet you on the other end. Yeah, I know you'll figure it out. And what was good about it is my dad was good at giving you that confidence and having that confidence in you to say, okay, I'm going to throw you to the wolves. It wasn't, I'm going to throw you to the wolves so I can laugh at you and watch you sing. It was, I'm going to throw you to the wolves because I know that I've done my job. Now it's time for you to spread your wings. Me and Smoke can probably tell so many stories of my dad said this or my dad said that, because he was very good at training us to be hard workers and to take pride in our work. And he would always say, I can get you all the work that's out there. It's on you and my drivers to keep that work. And that's so true. He was so good at his job, just like Smoke is so good at his job with dispatching, and they can find all the work that there needs to be, hopefully. But it's on us on the other end to do our job and be very responsible and gain the respect of all the farmers and the packers and everywhere you go to keep that business. And I think sometimes that is forgotten. What I tell people is I buy myself a good job. I buy myself a good job and a good wage to where I can have a little flexibility in my schedule instead of you got to be here at 6 and you're off at 3. If the kids have donuts with dads, I can go in and make that.
And now that we're raising kids of our own, I think we all hope that we can pass on that same grit. Here's Will again.
A lot of these old guys, older generation, they want to pass it on to somebody. But just like you said, sometimes the kids, I don't know if my boys are going to want to be in this. It's a lot of work. And if they have another passion, God bless them, and I hope they exceed at that. It is going to break my heart if they ain't going to want to come work cows with their dad, but that's okay. That's fine. That's their ambition. But I just hope that I can give my boys what my dad gave me, and it was a gift. When I grew up, everybody said, you work too hard, and you work too long. I am so thankful that my dad gave me that gift of love of work, of love of hard work, and not seeing it as work, but something to do. It kept me out of trouble. Not to say I didn't get into trouble, but it kept me out of a lot more trouble. But I think that's a gift that some kids need, and this older generation would give you that gift, but you got to want it, and you got to want it bad.
Josh Snyder grew up with his dad as his coach, and now he makes a living as a coach. But more than that, his dad taught him how to show up in life, not just in a uniform.
I found this kind of foothold in coaching. And again, my dad's been my coach my entire life through baseball and sports-specific things. And I just found this really unique ability to teach life lessons through fitness. And I think that's, my father's kind of hallmark. You ask all of his baseball players over, 20 plus years of coaching, hey, what did Coach Snyder teach you on the baseball field? Yeah, he taught you some things about baseball, but he taught you a lot about life.
Real quick, before we keep going, I want to tell you all about one of our sponsors. Managing livestock and commodities hauls just got easier. Roll On Dispatch is a streamlined trucking software platform built to help you save time and reduce paperwork. From quickly finding the right driver and dispatching loads to automating invoicing, everything happens in one easy-to-use app. A connected driver app is available for iOS and Android to keep communication between the office and the road seamless. And with QuickBooks integration, managing your fleet and finances is more efficient than ever. Whether you're growing your business or lightening your workload, Roll On Dispatch helps you focus on what matters most. Visit rollondispatch.com today and experience the future of dispatching. Now let's get back into it. Some advice just sticks with you forever. Here's a good line from Howard's dad.
My dad always told me, there's nothing better than a good customer, nothing worse than a bad one. Boy, there's nothing any truer said. Those people that treat you right 52 weeks a year, they're invaluable. And I don't mean financially. They don't haunt you at night. You don't have bad dreams about it. They're good people. I've been very, very, very blessed.
And this one's straight to the point. Rich's dad had a saying that pretty much sums up business in a single sentence. What advice would you give cattle feeders today?
Well, this isn't the time to get in. But if you get out, when are you going to get back in? My dad always said, you can't do business with an empty scoop shovel.
You can't do business with an empty scoop shovel. So my dad always said, it's hard to sell candy in a candy store if you ain't got no candy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So That's what my dad always said.
Okay, now we're getting to the part that I love. The things our dads always said.
I always say, what's the worst going to happen? You're going to go broke? Yeah, it's going to suck, but...
Been there before.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Was kind of hoping to not go back, but
it turned out fine the first time.
But if it were to happen...
The second time.
Yeah.
That is something your dad used to say.
His famous line was always, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter what it was. It's like, well, really? Well, will it be fine? Because it sure don't feel like it. All right, now it don't anyway. He was the most laxed man, but I tell you what, you got him mad. He was fucking mad.
If you've listened long enough, you've heard the "it'll be fine" line a few times on this podcast. It runs deep in the Barons family. Here's Jeremy with a classic Barons-style story about bad luck and brushing it off.
We have a little thing around here we call Barons luck. And essentially, it's bad luck.
Yeah, essentially it is. If I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I think it's come from just my dad was such a good-hearted person, but he just had the worst luck. So you're like, how can such a great-hearted dude have such the worst luck? Most of the time, he would let it roll off his back like water in a duck. I mean, there's a lot of times where he'd have that Barons attitude like we all do, you know, to where you're like, oh, I better just walk away from this one. You know.
And then there's Jeff's famous weekend line, the kind where you knew if he asked, your plans were about to change.
You know, even after we started dating then, and I wasn't working with your dad at all, his famous line is, hey, if you ain't doing anything this weekend, I need this done. Or what's your plans look like this weekend?
Always have plans.
Oh, always.
Jeff called, always have plans.
And when I was dating Katie and I lived down the road from the farm and he always knew when Katie was coming home, he'd be like, well, Katie ain't going to be home till noon. I got 5-6 trailers. You run over to McDonald's truck wash and wash the trailers out.
Run them over the wash.
And I think you got roped into riding along and doing that stuff too with me.
I did a lot of stuff when I was young.
Oh, God. You got anything going on? Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm busy.
Yeah. And then that turned into
every time.
That turned into, hey, I talked to Katie and you guys aren't doing anything tonight. There's a load down in Lineville. There's a load down. Can you just sail barn load? Just go grab it and bring it home. I just got home from trucking. No, I'll get the truck fueled and ready to go. And I will say that one thing about your dad. He has been up in life and down in life. And for 23 years, I've seen it so many times. But when it comes to you kids or his grandkids or like us, he would do anything for you. Anything.
Yeah, he would do anything for anybody.
There is one quote we actually have hanging on the wall at our office, and if you've ever worked with Jeff, you know exactly why it's up there.
What was your dad's quote that I just read down there? Don't let your lack of planning. How's that go?
Lack of planning on your end does not
constitute an emergency on my part.
I was planning.
Speaking of Jeff, we also have endless stories about Jeff and trucks.
What was the yellow truck when we first started dating?
Oh, that was my dad's.
That was your dad's. It wasn't around for very long.
Yeah, it was just another truck that ended up at the auction. But my dad drove a canary yellow Freightliner Coronado, and he loved that truck.
Do you think Freightliner was his preferred
I do.
Truck brand?
Yep.
Because we have now a cab over, a Freightliner. That was his...
Well, one of his first trucks.
And here's a little story between Denny and Smoke. The cab over is no exception to Baron's bad luck.
He always overcame. I mean, just in my lifespan, Dad passed away 3 years ago. So I was 35 when my dad passed away. And then 35 years, I'm pretty sure I seen him go broke like 4 times. I always tell everybody, actually, my dad's famous line always was, oh, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But what if it ain't fine, Dad?
Well,
because I got a feeling it's not gonna.
When he'd overhaul the motor, he'd never put new hoses on it. Twice in 1 week, he had 2 trucks to go down in the turnpike, and he had to get somebody out to put new hoses on it. See, that's a pretty expensive hose. I said, yeah. It'd been a lot cheaper if you'd just put them on in the first place.
In the first place.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, when we bought him that cab over for his 60th birthday, I rode with Pork. We picked that thing up. It was somewhere down around the Woodward, Oklahoma area. This is a typical Baron story, I feel like. So I'd pretty much already told the guy I was going to take it.
rode with Pork. We went to Liberal. Then we went over by Woodward, picked it up, looked at it, paid him for it. And we're coming home, and I'm going around the scale there on the turnpike.
You get off, take that little road and go around?
Yep. South Haven there.
Yep.
The Kansas-Oklahoma line.
Yep.
I get pulled over going around the scale. And I'm bobtail in this cab over. I have no paperwork. I gave him $15,000 cash. I get pulled over. And it was sketchy. I know it was. I'm like, I just bought this thing. I don't have no bill of sale. I don't got nothing. Anyway, for some reason, he let me go. So we're cruising up the turnpike, below a water line. So there me and Pork are. The side of the turnpike. We've blown a water line on this cab over. And we were in the middle of nowhere. We're like, now what? Well, we went to go jack it up. Jack didn't work. Pork somehow, he reaches up in there, gets the line splice, gets it put back on, and there is a pond, 300 yards. And we didn't have no jugs with us, no nothing. But we had both stop and got a pop. Oh, I had 2 20-ounce pop holes. I walked, I don't even know how many times. I walked to that pond. I'd fill up 2 pop bottles. And I walked back, and we did that until we filled it up. And I'm thinking, my God, is this what it used to be like back in the 80s? Because this is horrible.
And here's Denny again with a story about Glenn Behrens, someone we lost recently. And this is the kind of story that just goes to show that these kinds of professions just run in the family.
I know running Montana are some of your fondest memories of trucking. But like us personally anyway, that's just not something we do. I mean, we don't have the buyers, anymore.
Does Glenn still buy any cattle out there anymore?
Nope.
He used to go out there. His dad would come out and relieve him. He'd come home for a week or two, and he'd load us out there. And a lot of years, I made at least 15 rounds out of there every fall.
I'm telling you, that is just not a thing anymore.
But like I said, what killed that is you can't get nothing going that way. The freight gets high then.
It does. Okay, now I didn't realize that. Glenn's dad was a cattle buyer.
He'd relieve him out there. He'd come out and do the paperwork and that when he'd load and stuff. Then he'd be for a week or so.
Okay.
And then Glenn would come back again.
So not every lesson was about work. Some of the best stories are just about who these guys were as people.
My dad, we were all together. We would haul cows down in Missouri. And that's, when I was 10 years old or whatever. We get down there and they unload. We're coming back. Of course, we, us kids were little, 10 years old, whatever. He bought a bunch of fireworks in Missouri because you couldn't buy them in Iowa, coming back up.
Yep.
We stopped to eat hamburger, French fries, and Pepsi, and then the old man didn't have enough money to pay for supper. So I was either Kluver or one of them guys. Well, there was a Steinkamp, and there was a Kennebec, and then he knew all them guys. So they had to loan him $10 back then to buy supper because he bought too much fireworks. And we put it underneath the cubby hole, that old Peterbilt, the old open up door. Yeah, we had it all stuffed underneath there. Yeah. he overextended himself. God dang it, I got enough to pay for supper. It's like, damn.
Tell us about this. I think you've told me when I've asked you before, how did you end up with Tim Vogel? And you said, well, my dad was paying me $300 a week. Is that correct?
$350.
$350 a week. And that was in what year?
93 probably. But he wanted you to work 7 days a week. I was married. And then just, you know what I mean? He'd just get on you. He'd be on you at 7 o'clock Saturday morning if you're in the fall, and it's like, what's the incentive to keep busting your ass for $350 a week, right? After you've been running all week.
Gone all week, come home.
And then in the fall, you're supposed to go at 7 o'clock in the morning. You're supposed to get there and run till 8 o'clock Saturday night, and you're still getting $350. So I might go out and drink some on Friday night. I was going to get there maybe 10 o'clock and run till 6, and still making money. Then we got into it, because we were both strong-headed. I just went on there and take the CB and stuff out of my truck, and I said, there you go. There you go, buddy.
Let's find somebody else to do it for $350.
Marty's stories are classics. But then there's Denny, who reminds us just how much the world has changed since 1944.
It is just a different world.
Yes, it is. Really different.
I mean,
there's a lot of entitlement anymore. People think they deserve nice things just because they do.
Well, one thing as a parent we're probably guilty of, we tried to make it better for our children than we had it.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and we're partly to blame for that then, I guess.
You're right.
I think Dad said when I was born in 1944, Dad gives the doctor $25, I think. That's what it cost. I was born in February, and she said I went in the hospital, and it was the 9th of February. She said it was a beautiful day. I didn't even need a coat on. Dad went home that night, snowstorm. He didn't get back to the hospital for 7 days. And Mom could not go home in 7 days after having a baby unless she went home in an ambulance.
Really?
No.
Now they kick you out
And
within like 24
24
hours.
Yeah.
7 days.
Yeah. She was there 7 days, but and she could go home, but she had to have an ambulance. She couldn't go in the car. I plant a garden. For years, I've always had probably half, 3/4 of an acre. So I plant pumpkins and gourds, and that I just give it all away. Squash and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I get Kathy's girls to come out and help me plant them, and I think they kind of like it. They get to see how stuff grows and that.
Of course, I never had kids to bring them out, but like my brother did, you'd invite people out.
Oh,
to
yeah.
your
We
pumpkin patch
probably had, we'd have an Oktoberfest. We probably have 50 to 75 kids.
Oh.
And we had, the parents would come. We had food, and we had hayride. We had a bonfire. They could take marshmallows.
Yeah.
And I had the shop down. They could go down and paint or carve their pumpkins or whatever they wanted to do with it. And done. Then we'd have beer and food and pop and that for all the kids.
Here's a story from James about college that a lot of people can probably relate to. What did you go to school for?
My major was general ag. I went to South Dakota State.
Okay.
So my goal was just to pass college, and I did. I think that's a pretty good goal.
That is. I remember that's what my parents told me about high school. Like, it come to the point, they're like, because my dad had me trucking when I was 16.
Yeah. You're working.
And I remember my mom said, I do not care. Just pass. I was like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just say so?
Yeah, I remember my first semester, I got a 2.1 or 2.2, whatever it was. It doesn't matter. And my dad's like, so is that on academic probation? I said, no. And he's like, that is awesome. Because he was so worried about it. He saved a little bit of money in one of those, what are those college funds?
529 plan.
He made sure that we front loaded it all in the first semester because he didn't have a lot of confidence there. He's like,
faith you're gonna stick
yeah,
around.
exactly. He's like, let's use it all in the first semester because we don't know if we're gonna make it to semester 2. But I made a semester. That was my second worst semester. Freshman year, first semester, and my last semester. I mean, because last semester you're going out.
Yeah, you're on your
So
way out.
you're like, that's a 2.0 semester,
And everything worked out fine.
Everything worked out fine.
Back to Howard. He's a big old softy.
It must be something about genetic skipping because my son has the traits of my dad. It's so much, it's scary. Of course, when I was out on the road and gone, he was at the feedlot. I mean, he was a grandpa. He grew up around grandpa. I was gone. I was either on the road trucking or buying cattle, or I was gone. I was gone too much. And he's just like his grandpa, hard-headed, just like it. It skipped a generation. I always tell him. It went right over top of me. Hard-headedness went right to him. Well, I tell you, only got one daughter. Boy, this thought of giving her away Saturday, this is a hard pill to swallow. You'll laugh at this. You'll see. I went and got big, special black sunglasses. I look like Darth Vader. My daughter said, you are not wearing them to my
Because
wedding.
Howard don't get emotional.
Oh, this ain't going to be good. That's my baby.
Yeah.
I mean, this ain't going to be good. It ain't going to be good.
And one more from James.
The problem with your trucks is they show up too early and get there at 7. But I'm not going to I'm not going to leave the house until 7. So it's going to be 7:15. So just send them later.
Well, 10-4.
He's not a morning person.
Yeah.
Some of those guys don't know how to just slow down.
They just cannot relax enough to be.
Makes me feel guilty.
But they just can't relax enough to be on time. They have to be fucking half hour
You know
early.
what, though? My little boy loves looking out the window at the trucks. So even if nobody's getting loaded, he likes to look out the window.
Because we're hanging out in the morning. We're having breakfast. That's like a time we spend together.
Yeah,
At 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I think I just need to round back like Jeffy used to do. Egg sandwiches,
Yeah.
donuts, like
I haven't had it. Sparky's egg sandwich since Jeff trucked.
Right.
Forever.
It's just not a thing. I mean,
I thought that was just normal. And then like when it's not there anymore, you don't realize it's not normal. I thought you just got egg sandwiches when you loaded cattle.
No, that's just not a thing. I guess.
Should bring that back.
I should. You're right.
Mark wraps up this section with a story about dating Smoke's sister and working for Jeff, and how those two things just weren't going to mix.
I don't know. I just mixing love and work together wasn't going to be the answer there. I got my insurance and went back to
driving truck for Randy's.
Yeah, and it ended up being the greatest thing ever because the relationship I actually built with your dad, because he'd tell me shit that he wouldn't tell his kids for all the tea in China, and then now that he's passed on, some of these stories might come out down the road. Yeah, so then I just...
So you just went back to work for Randy's, driving truck.
Went over the road and it worked perfect, and actually, it was kind of a perfect relationship because she was so used to your dad being gone on the road.
Yep.
And she tells war stories of your dad used to just throw her in the truck during the summertime with random drivers that worked for you, and she'd say, go to the East Coast, go wherever, and then when she'd get in trouble, she'd remember scooping out all the livestock trailers on Saturday and throwing hay bales down just to throw them back up.
I do got a few stories of Katie getting in trouble because I was the one that always worked on the farm. I was just the one that always did it. There's a few stories of Katie getting in trouble, and Dad made her, would make her come wash trailers out, or like you said, throw hay. One story I remember very vividly is he had her throwing hay bales down from the loft. And I don't remember how many she threw down. Don't matter. She threw these hay bales down. He comes in. He goes, what are you going to do with those? She goes, well, that's what you told me to throw down. He goes, no, them are the wrong ones.
Them are the straw bales.
Yeah.
I remember the party that she was at in Breda, that the next day she was doing the hay bales because your dad come in hot pissed.
Yeah.
And like I said, I knew of him, but didn't know him. And all she talks about is that it's in all your Baron DNA. When you guys get mad, you slam your fist. Boom, boom, boom. She said, all the way home, man, just beat the shit out of that dash, and you better be up in the morning.
Now we get to the next generation. Just last week, you all got to hear how Smoke really feels about his boys.
I want to talk about our kids for a little bit. Okay, so our boys are 4 and 2, and they are a blast. I mean, they are at the ages, as everybody that has kids know, that they are.
I don't know if it gets any better than this.
They're at the ages, man. It is just the kids say the darndest things.
And then Ridge and Royce came in and gave me about 3 minutes of gold, and they totally stole the show. Here's what they had to say about their dad.
Hello.
Tell me your name.
Ridgeburn.
Hey, what's your name?
I'm Bubba.
Your name's Bubba.
Royce Harvey. Bubba Royce Harvey. And
how old are you?
I'm 4 and...
How old is your brother?
He's 2. So... what are you doing? What are you doing?
You're wondering what everybody listening is doing?
Yeah.
Oh. I have some questions for you. Okay. Can you tell me what your dad does for work?
My dad smokes with JT Express, and he talks on the phone a lot. When he gets off the phone, I said, who did you call, Dad? And he said, that was Bob and Aaron.
That was Bob?
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to do with your dad?
I like to hold cows with him and load cows off with him, and I like to spend money.
You like to spend money? What do you spend money on?
On Mom.
On Mom?
Yeah, on Mom.
What kind of stuff do you buy, Mom?
We buy Mom flowers.
You're so sweet.
Mom, do you like flowers?
I love flowers.
And Mom, that was so much fun. If you ask me to go get some money for me so I can buy you some popcorn.
Oh yeah, tell me about that. What did you do yesterday for the first time?
My mom got me some money so I can buy her some popcorn.
All by yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's something your dad always says to you?
On to the next one.
That's what he says. What's that mean?
It says, let's go host more cows.
More cows. Okay.
And
What?
my dad's still trucking, and
Is he trucking today?
yep.
When did he leave?
At 5:30 or something.
No, I think he left about 10 o'clock last night because remember, you were going to bed. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And my dad slept in the truck
Have you ever slept in the truck with your dad?
a long time ago, I did.
Tell me about it. Where'd you guys go?
To the sale barn.
What were you loading?
I was just sleeping there.
Oh, you were sleeping in the truck?
Yeah. I slept all night.
Yeah, that's pretty good sleeping, isn't it?
I sleep all night so I don't get tired again.
Do you take lots of naps in the truck?
Yeah. Mom, do you have any more questions?
I do. I want you to tell me some stories about your dad. Like, what do you do with your dad for fun?
Actually, Bubba can talk about those.
Okay, Bubba, it's your turn.
No, it's my turn.
Did you go to work with Dad the other day?
Yeah.
Yeah, were you skipping daycare?
Yeah. Got cows and over. Get some more cows.
And you bought some more cows?
I'm done. I'm done. Happy birthdays. Happy Father's Day. Love you, Dad. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Rural Dispatch. I hope you found something valuable to take back to your own operation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. You can keep up with me between episodes on socials at Barons & Co. or join our email list on our website to get new episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Wednesday. Until next time, keep those wheels turning. We'll talk soon.